Palo Alto Networks is protecting more than 80,000 companies worldwide, millions and millions of people, which makes us a top target for cyber attacks. My name is David Savo, and join me in this Discovery series to explore how the Palo Alto Security Operations team is protecting our company, our people, and learn how we do it. Welcome to This Is How We Do It. This is the first episode, and with me I have Devin Johnstone, Palo Alto Networks Security Operations SOC specialist.
That's right.
Devin, I always wanted to ask you, and I always see Palo Alto Networks as the company protecting the world. We have tens and tens of thousands of companies that we are protecting, millions and millions of people. So in a way, we are a little bit like the Pentagon protecting the American people. And we run our security operations, we slice and dice our data in the cloud, we run our machine learning analytics in the cloud. So we are a pretty good target. If I was a hacker, Palo Alto Networks would be probably on my list as the first one to attack.
We're in a very unique position in that we're a customer of Palo Alto Networks as much as we are working for Palo Alto Networks. Specifically, our responsibility is protecting all of the infrastructure behind the services that we offer. So although we're not looking at customers' data locally in their site, we do have other teams that offer some services there. Our SOC is really focused on making sure everything behind the scenes is safe, as well as our employees, and monitoring what they do on a day-to-day basis.
So I've been interviewing a lot of folks from the product, from the research, from the AI machine learning side of things. We are always on top of our game, 3 steps ahead of the adversaries. But your team is the one, at the end of the day, in the last mile, using all that technology to fight in the real world. What kind of volume are we talking about here?
If we just look at raw log ingestion, our SOC is ingesting about 56 terabytes per day. Massive amount of data, and over half of that, even approaching 2/3, is from the cloud, because that is where most of the services we are hosting live today. If I were to take that 56 terabytes, that works out to about 35 million events, individual occurrences that are logged.
So 33 million events means that there are 33 million things that may be threats
per day.
To the company per day.
Per day.
Tell me an example of one of these events.
And that's really our job in the SOC, is to take that 35 using our own knowledge, using the technology to get it down to a manageable number of alerts. And in those are the basic user activity things, like a user's opened a potential phishing email, or a user's downloaded an application that they're not supposed to have on their endpoint. Maybe we get alert for it. Everything that the SOC does today is reactive to one of those alerts coming from our sensors. Or on the flip side, we're also doing the proactive threat hunting, which is using our knowledge and research of what attack surface is today, going into logs and systems and trying to find evidence of things that have happened where one of those alerts may not have gone off.
So thinking practically 30, 40 million, how many million events, you're not going to divide that to the number of people that you deal with 1.5 million events today.
Yes.
How do you deal with that sheer volume of just events, not even speaking about threats?
And it sounds funny when we say it, but there are organizations dealing with that high number of alerts in the millions. And that's really why we want to focus on transforming the SOC. Is nobody can handle that number of alerts. You can have all of the technology in the world, but it's still too much. So our focus is really at using the machine learning that we have in the products, using our own knowledge to tune down to the important stuff that we really want to get as a ticket, the stuff that is valuable for us to respond to. We did a little exercise with that 35 million events, and we said, if we just turned on all of the security technology and we let it hit the SOC, what would that look like? And it was the tune of about 11 million alerts per day, just out of the box, just turned it on. And that's just using Palo Alto Networks' own technology, not including other third parties. So that's where the machine learning, our own work in configuration, grouping, excluding, gets us from that 11 million alerts per day down to, on average, 133 over the past couple months is the number we calculated. That actually makes a ticket that the SOC sees and we respond to.
These are not just events that you need to interpret sometime. these are events that you're running against time with, right? So it could be a threat that you need to act on immediately, and it could be at the end of your list. So if we are talking about like a couple hundreds, that range, are you still using some technology to deal with that, or your analysts are actually looking into those one by one?
Absolutely. Once those 130-ish alerts get into Cortex XSOAR, which is both our ticketing system and running the SOAR playbooks to help us do the SOC response, once those tickets are created, there's a portion of them that are fully automated, end to end, about 15%. So the playbook picks it up, does all of the background research it needs to do, and then closes that ticket off. And that is marked as something the SOC handled, but we didn't put any hands on it. Mm-hmm. Every single other one of those alerts has some automation help it along, whether that be the playbook will run proactively, start the investigation and response, and the SOC will finish it, or vice versa. Sometimes we'll start an investigation, and then we'll reach a decision path where we can hand it over to XSOAR and say, close this off for me. But we have automation helping every single alert that comes into the SOC today. And our goal is to try to move as many of those as possible to that bucket where the tool handles all of them, right till closure. And the stuff that we're automating is tasks that we don't provide value to as the human analysts. A question I get asked often is this automation ever going to take your job? And my answer is, I hope not. But I think there's still going to be an aspect where we need to be focused on the threat hunting, because that's where we provide value as humans. Understanding the context of a situation, thinking like the attacker, and give the repetitive stuff to the automation. So in that case, I think our jobs are saved, but they're going to get even more interesting because we're going to be able to focus on more important stuff rather than just looking at the same tickets every single day.
That makes total sense. So tell me, if a cyber threat that we are talking about would go from beginning to end without you touching it, can you pick one? How would it go?
Absolutely. And this is a great use case of how we help educate and proactively assist our employees. We have developers whose job it is to spin up services in Google Cloud, start new projects, build new instances of projects in AWS. And we want them to be able to move as fast as possible. So they're allowed to do a lot. They can spin up these resources and they can start building things in them. And sometimes they'll forget to enable a security feature. Very common, innocent mistake. They're not trying to expose us to risk. But we detect that, get an alert into Cortex XSOAR, and then we're able to mitigate whatever security risk they've introduced before they even realize it's happened. And they get an automated email letting them know why their project was impacted. They can educate themselves, get back to work. And in that case, we haven't needed to bother a human SOC analyst at all. Other less innocent ones might be somebody intentionally going and Googling for software that's unapproved, and they know they're supposed to get approval before downloading it to their work computer, and they don't. And they go and download it, and then they've got malware on their endpoint. And so in that case, we're doing the response after that detection has happened. But there is a multitude of different things, whether they're intentional or not, that we consider a risk to us that we want to respond to as the SOC.
So walk us through, let's say that this latter person who is downloading a malware, let's say, gets a marketing promotional email to say, hey, this tool does exactly what you were just Googling for. Here's the tool. They managed to phish the person somehow. Maybe the person is completing a form or something, and then maybe they'll deploy a malware. It's going to come down. Walk me through step by step how that threat builds up, and at one point do we catch it?
Sure. And I'm glad you brought up the phishing example, because it is still one of the largest attack surfaces that we have. It's the largest attack surface for many other organizations out there, because it is still very easy for an attacker to just trick one person. That's all they need. It takes one person to download that attachment or to click that link and enter their credentials. So in the scenario that this has happened to us, we'll get detected usually at our inbound mail appliance or when it ends up in the user's mailbox itself. So it could be our wildfire scanning links and attachments as that email is flowing through Proofpoint. If it gets through Proofpoint, it could be sitting in Gmail now, and we have different detectors running there. So wherever that email gets detected, and whether it's on link or file, or maybe it's even the reputation of the sender, we're going to try to stop it as early as possible. So the email could be stopped at the gateway. It could be moved to spam or trash on behalf of the user before they even realize it's in their inbox. But let's walk through the scenario that we don't catch it before.
Let's say it's an
able to take it out.
iMessage on my work laptop. Maybe you don't have anything in there.
Sure.
And then I just double click on the iMessage on my MacBook, and boom, it's there.
Yeah.
What's happening then?
We're also just as worried about threats from iMessage. Text smishing is a big concern today. We do have technology that can help detect and prevent on mobile. Cortex XDR will actually scan those links if you've got it rolled out on mobile devices. And if you're on your laptop and you get an iMessage, if you try to access those links as well, we've got Cortex XDR watching. We've got our next generation firewall watching your outbound traffic.
What if it's my personal computer that I happened to authenticate against our Google infrastructure? I don't have anything running, no XDR agents running. I got an iMessage from somebody. I have it synced on my computer. Click, deploy. And then that malware is now running on my personal computer that has access to Google Drive, Gmail, probably a few other things.
That's right.
How do you take it from there? What can that malware do to me and to the company?
Well, in that scenario, now we're looking at controls within those SaaS applications themselves, Gmail, Google Drive. So we're looking at your behavior. What is normal for your user account? Have you suddenly started doing something like trying to download every file that's available to you? We're going to get alerts based on volume. Any of those rare activities that are abnormal in relation to what you would normally do. That user behavioral analysis is something we would use to see, are you accessing from your personal computer, or is it malware accessing from your personal computer?
So you have filters and you have alerts set up for Google Drive. So there you would catch me, or the malware.
In that scenario, yes.
What would you do?
In that case, we're actually going to quarantine that file. If you've uploaded a file, if your user account is accessing or trying to make changes, we might end up locking you out of your account so you no longer have access to anything. That would actually be done by Cortex XSOAR in many cases. We've set it up to identify the behavior which we want to stop before we've had a chance to look at it. So that gives us some time if we're not able to look at it that second, and then be able to mitigate whatever is going on your computer before we can get to you.
Incredible. And this is fully automated. You cannot really afford to wait for a day if I do this on a Sunday or a Saturday.
Certainly.
So it's Cortex XSOAR is making a well-informed decision in that spot.
That's right.
To say that, boom, this guy is dangerous right now.
That's right. And we're going to be able to do that in Cortex XSIAM in the next coming weeks and months. We just made the transition internally at Palo Alto Networks, and now all of our logging is in Cortex XSIAM. And for those who might not have heard of Cortex XSIAM yet, it has replaced SIEM for us. So it is ingesting all of our logs, doing the correlation, triggering alerts, even the details they're coming from Cortex XDR. But where XSIAM differentiates from many SIEMs out there is it's going to allow us to start doing some of that SOAR workflow in the same tool, rather than farming it out to XSOAR and having that delay of transfer of information, which today is not huge, but it's noticeable. There's a couple seconds before the ticket makes it over. Now XSIAM is going to start to be able to go, you've had this alert triggering. I could suggest that you implement this SOAR automation in order to respond to this, and then handle it itself in the same tool. We're beginning to automate the automation, if that makes sense. Getting the tools to suggest the automation that could help you do even less work. So it'll be interesting to see where they take XSIAM. We don't know yet if we're going to completely move all of our automation from XSOAR into XSIAM. It'll be, as the product matures and we discover more and more about how we can use it, we'll see where it takes us.
So let's take that threat one step further. Let's say that this malware is a sophisticated one. It's not doing anything crazy. It knows what it's looking for. Maybe it tries to simulate a human behavior of discovering a folder structure and documents, and it starts to exfiltrate, a few things in a normal pace. What happens then?
That's where we start getting into those behavioral analytics. The analytics module in XSIAM is specifically looking at abnormal or rare behavior. An example of when we were able to actually detect something like that of importance was the SolarWinds attack. When the SolarWinds attack happened, we had already been using SolarWinds for some time. There was an update where a compromised DLL was pushed down and it started trying to do some malicious behavior. It was calling out to a C2. And Cortex was able to go, this has both never happened before in your environment, but it's also trying to call out to something malicious. There was multiple detections. And that was just from having knowledge of the rarity or the abnormality of that behavior without us having to configure that detection in advance. This is one of the areas where we excel the most, because now it's not up to the SOC to imagine all of these potential scenarios and try to predict the future. We have machine learning today that can do that type of behavioral detection and prevention for things we have never seen before.
C2 is command and control, right? It's
Correct.
when a malware is looking for a command, looking for a server that tells on the internet what to do.
That's right. Beaconing, we call it.
Beaconing.
Calling home.
What's the farthest that an attacker ever got in Palo Alto Networks? You know, just think about the entire spectrum of attacks that you have ever seen.
Luckily for us, not very far. And the proof of that is how little you've seen Palo Alto Networks in the news for negative things. We're in the news a lot about our growth and acquisitions, but we haven't had something that's landed us in any financial or regulatory hot water. And that is largely in part due to that autonomous decision-making in our products that's able to go, I'm going to alert or potentially block on anything that's new. And there's various levels that customers can take this when they're configuring it. You can choose to take the hard line approach and say, don't let anything through until it's been dynamically analyzed. Or you can take a bit more lenient approach depending on your risk appetite and allow things to run and then do the analysis behind the scenes and backtrack if necessary. So there is options for how hard we respond to those types of scenarios. And we're kind of somewhere in the middle. We want to allow our employees to be able to do their jobs at a rapid pace because we are fast growing. But luckily for us that we have that in our toolkit. Attackers have not gotten very far with us, and I'm going to knock on wood that continues. But so far in my time here, we've been very blessed by the technology that we have in place.
Thank you, Devin. I really enjoyed our chat. And folks, in the next episode, Devin and I are going to talk about the Palo Alto Security Operations team, how we structured it, and also go in a little more details in how we use technology, what are the various roles, what they are doing, so you can learn how we do it. Until then, hasta la vista.